And that's why it's important to think about scholarships, think about federal work study, think about credit. What are some of the incentives that, if we want students to play a leadership role, that we as an institution can offer so that they can actually commit the time to do this over a longer period of time? Not just a one-time event, but really think about a sustained developmental integrated model where there'll be scaffolding experiences. How do we build the infrastructure to make that happen? And then a final piece, and this is a little bit counterintuitive in a talk about the role of students, is that one of the most important things for this to be successful is to reconstitute faculty roles. So to think differently about the role of a faculty member, to think about students as colleagues in their classroom. So what does that mean in practice? And so really thinking through, what are some of the examples? What are the role of faculty in a model which might be more in line of a collaborative engagement as opposed to instruction or even a learning paradigm? So I want to end with this. So when I lived in Ohio, one of the things that I had mentioned that my daughter was born when I was here. And right before she was born, my wife and I went to see Maya Angelou give a talk. And it inspired us. And Maya Angelou talked about this idea of, in the worst of times, in the meanest of times, that the viewer can see a ray of hope. And that ray of hope is a rainbow that comes through the clouds. And she used the metaphor of a rainbow coming through the clouds as a metaphor for young people and the hope of young people. That inspired us so much that we actually named our daughter Maya after Maya Angelou. But I think it's really important for this work today is that, we're in higher ed, we're getting beat down. There's a lot of pressures. It's sometimes a really thankless, hard environment. And I think when we think about students as central to this work, it reminds us of why we're doing it. It reminds us of why you became a faculty member, why you went into student affairs, why you're doing the work you're doing. So this model allows us to see students as that rainbow to transform higher education and transform society. So thanks. I'm looking forward to our roundtable discussions and for further conversation as a group. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. So here's what we want to do, and we want to take about 10 minutes to do this. If you would to go around the table, and each person should speak, and just share what did you hear that really resonated with you? We've got a lot of great stuff, and we'll have a chance to talk about it. But what's top of mind for you that you heard that really resonates? And it could resonate because you really agree with it, you believe, man, this is what we ought to be doing. What resonates as it relates particularly to who we are and what we're trying to do at Cleveland State. So it could be because you see it as a real opportunity and it connects. It could resonate because it really felt like this is way out of line with where we are or where we're going. Whatever reason is legitimate. But let's at least go once around, every person respond, be brief, but share what it is that resonates. And we'll have our facilitators capture that briefly on the newsprint on the tables. And then we'll hear a little bit from every table, okay?
When I went to school, I was a peer teacher for almost 3-4 years before I even graduated, and I think it helps you develop, with the mentoring of the professor, it helps you develop a stronger personality, and it builds your connections, and if you do a good job, which I'm sure they will with the right mentoring, they help your connections and moving forward after graduation and beyond just being a student. And I also, one of the scholarships I got from the honors department, one of the requirements was to actually help out in the community, and that kind of also helps you increase your connections, and it also helps you give back to the community that is giving a lot to you in the first place.
The need for transparency, low tolerance for hypocrisy. I think as a student there's been a lot of issues that have come up, especially recently with the credit conversion and all these things. And I don't think it's been well publicized what the plan is, what's going on.
I actually turned to the same notes page that you just mentioned, that teaching democracy is practicing democracy. And I guess as a nonprofit in the community, I engage with a lot of students who are coming to school every day and they know nothing about their surrounding community. So the opportunity to engage them and to have them understand the community that they're living and working in, I think that practice is how they will develop those civic habits that will lead them to future engagement. So.
And I think what really resonated for me was the idea that students, of thinking of students as peers. And I've been really kind of working that way, and I've been moving more and more towards that model where, for example, I'll prepare lesson plans where I don't have the answer like I genuinely don't know the entire answer. And then I ask them to help me with that and think about it, and let's together figure out the answer to this problem. And I've been wondering if that's okay or not. I've been really doubting that approach. So that kind of helped me feel like I'm heading in the right direction a little bit.
It really makes sense if students feel some kind of ownership, and here's a problem, some financial resource might make a real difference, and students can take ownership of that.
There is not a lot of additional involvement for students to be involved. You know, we come to class and we leave. And that's it. We don't get involved in anything. And so as a graduate assistant and as a student here, people don't participate. And that's part of the problem. You can't help your community if you don't do anything to even learn about what's going on. So that kind of connects with you guys.
I again was noting the descriptions of the students as peers, moving away from the conversation of them being consumers and customers, and then the description in regard to how they're presenting themselves and perceiving things in the discussion of an excuse me but type of generation versus the yes sir, yes ma'am. And though I do want them to consider the excuse me part, we hear the but part quite a bit, but if there is a course to help them see that the excuse me is as important as the but.
When you look at, like, we're from Tracy, where, you know, student engagement is, I would say it's fairly low. So when you look at opportunities, where can you get those opportunities? It's in the classroom. So really having faculty understand the importance of that and being able to incorporate that into the curriculum. So it's not just, okay, we have a project, let's put it in here, but actually utilizing the subject to kind of being able to teach that subject within whatever project's going on. You know, being able to connect it. And then, I mean, those are ways to kind of, you know, for students who might not necessarily understand an area, like to be able to connect and understanding on a different level.
Whether you've just gained, you know, whether you've just gained, you know, some substantive knowledge about, you know, a particular subject or topic, as opposed to whether you've actually been engaged in thinking about it and solving problems.
You have all of these different learning styles in the classroom, and because you have that, you have to have an approach to effectively communicate with all three different learning styles in order, this group is the engaged group. This group is the group that they may come up with a project or something. This group is just the group that wants to read the material. And this group you may have to talk to, and they have to have the auditorial part. So, I mean, I think that is really important to have in that one setting. And that goes into the collaboration, the integrating, and things of that nature.
I feel like in today's world, in order for you to be an engaged student, in order for you to have a say, you really have to fight your way through it. There's no such thing as, we'll come to you, we will just come all the way to where you are and ask you what you think and take what you say to the heart. I think it's a battle, but it is in this very battle where you learn how to become an engaged student, and you get the awesome experience of being engaged.
Absolutely. There's certain vantage points and perspectives that faculty bring, administration, and students and I think all of them have some validity. You know, not one more than the other, because one could argue, you know, a faculty member, I've been through this, I know this, but the students are the ones why we're here. You know what I mean? So I think it equally, everyone needs to have a voice at the table because everyone can contribute value. You know what I mean? Depending on what seat they're sitting in.
Let's just go around and one comment, one thing that was shared at each table that you would very briefly share with us.
One of the students sitting at our table said that he was in a situation where he was in a leadership role, but then he was told that they needed an adult to make the decision because he was not considered an adult because he was a student.
Right.
So that was kind of eye-opening to everybody.
Yeah, that's good. So this idea of student as colleague, not part of the, obviously part of the perception of the leader or instructor or whomever was overseeing that process. That's good insight. Very good.
We had a carryover of something similar to what you were saying as well. We ended up with these issues that all seem to relate. It began with democracy versus hypocrisy, which falls into democracy as rhetorical or democracy as its practice. Then that broke down into actual student populations because we have the commuter students and we have the students who live on campus. So that the students who live on campus have a better a way to practice what we say as democracy, but there's this yes but that comes from the commuter students who are actually in the community that don't have a chance to practice the rhetorical democracy. So we then saw the classroom as the place where this is bridged, where the classroom then can become this place that is not where democracy is preached, but rather discussed. That if we have lesson plans and faculty that say, I'm not coming to you with a solution, I'm coming to you with questions that we can all address. And that also helps faculty that's kind of, we get squeezed between democracy versus hypocrisy as it's practiced and as it's preached. And there were more, but I've run out of time.
Very good insight with that tension and taking advantage of the diversity of students we have and how do you make that work in the classroom. Very good. Man, I don't know. Who wants to go after? No. All right, we're going. They're ready. They're up to the task.
I'm trying to look for a theme, and honestly a theme that I see is decision making. And it's letting go, from a faculty perspective, of the ability to make decisions and having complete control and putting some of that in the hands of the students. And I think that's sort of the theme that I heard.
That's good. Decision making. Authority. That's good.
Yeah.
We really focused on the student leadership piece and how to really bring that more to the forefront. So we really like the scholarship, the on-campus, the community engagement, and we really talked about the shared power between faculty, not only faculty, but also the administration. Because you have 3 tiers. You have business affairs, student affairs, as well as academic affairs. And how can the students have a voice if you have all of these different entities making the decisions, but no one really kind of bringing the students to the table with a viable voice. So these were things that we talked about, as well as the lack of value in doing this. That's one of the challenges. How do students resonate with what we're trying to do to make it valuable to them and to decrease the apathetic approach or response to some of these challenges?
Very good.
The need for transparency and a low tolerance for hypocrisy as being characteristics among the millennial generation. And also we wanted to validate the idea that student understanding of politics is really acquired on campus.
Two things. Want to also bridge to Dr. Porter's comment, our table in terms of decision making and engagement. Dr. Seck came up with a very interesting suggestion, a little bit of a hot topic. He said he thinks that the outcome would have been different if students had been part of the conversation relative to credit hours and engaging them at that level of decision making. But also, I am proud to say that the faculty and former faculty that I'm sitting with actually do practice engagement in their courses. engaging the students in different ways, and offering the opportunity to challenge the professor, to offer their own suggestions of curriculum, and also to truly participate in the subject matter and share feedback. So.
Good stuff. So, Nick, if you want to respond generally or specifically to any of those, and then we'll just open it up to Q&A.
Yeah, well, let me start with response. So I love this process because I kind of come out of the tradition of democratic education, and I looked at the Highlander Folk School as a model for that. And the Highlander, for folks that don't know, was kind of the central hub for education during the labor movement in the 30s and 40s, civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, and still active today. And one of the things that Miles Horton used to always say, and I always think this to myself whenever I'm in a setting like this, is that over the long term, 20 learners will make more of a difference than 200 listeners. So this is what it's about. So I don't want to, I'm hoping for as much time as we have here, we can have a conversation. The one thing I did think of related to your table was the most famous student who ever went to Highlander was Rosa Parks, and she was there the summer before the Montgomery bus boycott. And she talks about, the common story of Rosa Parks, the seamstress who didn't want to take it anymore. But she tells the story about being at Highlander was the first time in her adult life where she realized that blacks and whites could sit and work together, learn together, sleep in the same rooms together, and it created a space for that.